Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of VAAS Live, where we put the creativity in the conversation. Along with me is Chad Nuss, our master draftsman, and respectfully and humbly known as our humble wizard. Chad, how's it going this evening?
I'm good. How are you? It's good to see you
I'm
again.
doing great. I'm doing awesome. It's been an amazing day of teaching art classes here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, and now we get to paint or draw or create with you guys. So we hope that you have your sketchbooks out, your paints out, your quilts out, your knitting needles, your sewing, whatever it is that you do to create, we hope that you're creating with us. And this evening, I'm going to be working on my oil painting that I'm working in the Flemish grisaille process. Chad's going to be continuing to draw these amazing comics. I'll let him kind of fill you guys on in that. But hopefully you jump in, let us know you're here, tell us what you're working on, and ask questions. We've recently launched a new video series calling Art History in a Minute. And so we can talk about art history as well if you like. Really, whatever you guys want to discuss about art, we're happy to do it with you guys. So all of you that just jumped on Instagram, X, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, we're so glad you guys are joining us this evening. Chad, I'm pretty stoked, brother. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on and how you're excited for this evening.
Well, I always love this time because it gives us, a chunk of couple hours to get some drawing done. And so for me, I know this is the time that I get to work on my next graphic novel. I've got several projects going on right now, but this is the time that I get to sit down and work on this. I do get a bit of time throughout the week, sometimes to like go in and maybe sharpen some edges or clean some things up that I worked on the last live stream, and I'm doing a bit of that here as well. But yeah, so I love doing this. I love seeing what you're doing, and I love interacting with everyone that gets online. And yeah, it's a good time.
I got pretty excited earlier this week because it's been a while since you worked on your large format drawing, which is what you originally started out in these live streams, right? Was
Yep.
some of these larger drawings that you did, charcoal and graphite. But I got to see you work on that a little bit. How exhilarating was it? I know you've been super focused on other things, but how did it feel to get back to that project that it's been a while to kind of get into?
Yeah, it's really good. So I've talked about this before, but my real love in drawing is charcoal because it's so much faster for me, and I'm able to do the same. I don't know, it sounds kind of arrogant. I'm able to do the same quality of work as I do the other things, but just the same level of work in half the time. And
Right.
so it enables me to have a lot more freedom, and I'm a lot more expressive with it, so I can still achieve realism, but there's just a different quality that comes with the charcoal work for me personally that I really enjoy. So as I was looking at the piece, I've been working both in pencil and charcoal. And the place where I was working, I was doing a lot of pencil, and it was really slow. And I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that I can do the same effects in charcoal and possibly even better. And I was like, I'm just gonna finish this off in charcoal because I really want to get it done. I've been working on it for a really long time, and I have some other projects that I want to get to, some large charcoal, just fully charcoal work. So I really want to get this done. So it felt really good to get back to it and work on some other areas. And I still got a few things I need to fix on it and some other small details I need to work on, but it's really coming along. It's over 3/4 of the way done. And yeah, it felt really good. It was really nice. So
Yeah, I mean, I got to take a look at it and I was like, man, this is really looking fantastic, And
thanks.
it's exhilarating to get to see you kind of go back to it and put some time into it. And I thought that was awesome. So very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
thank
Tell
you.
us where you're at. Now, most of you guys, I think, have followed along enough to know that Chad is working on his comic pages now, but you've really showed us so much background work that's gone into this, and this has been a challenging page for you, right? I mean, give us a
Yeah.
little bit of the background on it and why we're where we're at.
Yeah, so I've probably redrawn the ship about 3 or 4 times. And even last Saturday when I was working on it, I felt like I was in a good space. And then I looked at it this week and I fixed it even some more. So I do feel like I'm at a good place now where I just need to clean it up a little bit, start working on the line quality and variety. I feel like the ship itself is in a good place as far as its shape and its the angle and all of that. I do need to add a few more details to it, clean it up a little bit. But today, I think what I'm going to work on is start working on the background. And the reason for that is because when the thing I was struggling with this week when I was looking at it was I felt like it was a bit simplistic. It almost had kind of like you know how you see like the Batman the animated series where it's really well done, but it's a bit simplistic just because it's animation.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
had that kind of feel to it, whereas all my other work, usually in the comic books, is very, very detailed. So I didn't really like that, but I went in and added a few details. But then I thought, I really need to work on the background because if the background is really detail heavy, then I will need the ship to be a little bit more simplistic.
For
Um,
contrast purposes, right?
yeah, exactly. If it's all detailed, then it just gets lost. And so I really want this ship to stand out. So it might actually need to be a bit less on the detail. So I'm going to start working on the background. So the background as a whole almost has like one of those fish lenses where in the way distant, it kind of is silhouetted. The silhouetted, you can see it at the top here. It's a kind of the back of the city, and then the city, it's hard to describe, but from this excuse me, from this angle, you can see the top of the building just peeking over this kind of valley in the mountains. In the first book, you see it from the other side where it's the city that's kind of nestled in this valley, and this river goes through it, and there's a waterfall. And so what you're seeing it is from the other angle where you just see the top of the buildings up here just above this ridge. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this ship that's being launched is actually being launched outside the city where no one knows where it is, but they do see it actually lifting out into the sky. But in the story, no one can get outside the city because there's a lot of how shall I say, there's a lot of barriers preventing people from getting out there. So no one knows where this ship is being launched from, but I want them to see that it's within like people can see the ship. It's within eye
Right.
distance. I don't know how to say it, but either way, words are hard. Um, but there's also
Words are hard.
in the second book, I did a map of the island, which I'll get it out here in a minute as we're talking, but I have a map of the island. So I'm also making sure this drawing is accurate to that map as well. So that is all guiding how I'm doing this background.
Right.
And then on top of that, I'm trying to do it from two different perspectives, or kind of like that fishbowl or
Fish
fish
eye.
eye
Yeah.
look. So the top looks normal, but then as you get down, you're in like extreme 1 point perspective, and then everything kind of bends around that. So it'll be a bit of a challenge, but I think we'll be able to do it. So a lot of this background is going to be kind of like forest and landscape, and then there'll be some more kind of like this launch pad technology type design towards the bottom. So that's where I'm at right now. How about you?
Man, well, first off, I think that's really awesome. And I kind of, before I kind of go into mine, I want to go back to something that you mentioned, Chad, because we talk about this quite a bit with a lot of our students, right? Which is um, the contrast of detail versus simplicity, right? What is your focal point? What do you
Yep.
want? And you mentioned it, you're like, I want the ship to stand out. But you and I teach a lot of drawing classes, and a lot of times when the whole thing is so rendered, or it's so texture heavy or so heavy in value, that you forget what it is that you want your viewer to see. And so you're really
Yep.
holding on to that, right? Like, hey, not only are the characters in the story needing to see the ship or being hinted at the ship, that it's there, that it exists, you also want the reader, the viewer, to really focus on the ship. The background's great, but the ship is the focal point because it
Yep.
seems like it's a key point in the story, right? That it's outside the
Yes.
city and this ship is here.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and then the other aspect of that, not only just the details, like I was saying before, you have to have coherency. So you have to really pay attention to the details of like, okay, where is this launch pad? Well, it's outside the city, and people don't know where it is, but it's close enough to where people can see the launch of the ship because in the story, the scientists that designed the ship wanted people to see it. It was kind of like a technological marvel that they were able to create this spaceship that could launch off this planet, because at that point in the story they didn't really have any fuel, they didn't know how to make it happen, but they were able to find cobalt, and they were able to engineer it in such a way that it became flammable and was able to ignite and blast. Man, these words were able to launch a ship up into space, and as the ship is going up in the air, the smoke comes out as this brilliant blue. So it was like this
Oh, that's
amazing,
cool.
beautiful, spectacle. But at the same time, they didn't want the people to know where it was being launched from. And part of that is because this is a dystopian society, so they're trying to keep the appearance that everything is perfect, but really this ship is hiding a secret. And so
Ah,
it's that it's that thing where it's that kind of a both and. They want people to be marveled at it, but they're hiding a secret right in front of their eyes. So all that goes into this drawing, just trying to think through like what the background is, why everything is intentional in these drawings. And yeah,
oh,
that's what I love about art.
it's funny you say that, because I literally, during our color theory class these last couple of weeks, the opening slide is probably my favorite slide in the whole thing, because the opening slide states that it's all about mixing, manipulating, and mastering color on purpose, right? It's
Yeah.
that last little bit to me that makes such a huge difference, which is on purpose. We do a lot of things instinctually, right? But it's that mastery of being able to manipulate it and do it on purpose that I think separates it. And so I think that's kind of where you're at here, is all of these decisions are purposeful. And even though some of the viewers or the readers may not know that that's going into your execution, it is known, right? At least
Yes.
in my opinion, it is known, it is experienced. And I think that's the difference between good and great.
Yes, and that's what makes, storytelling so fun, is that there's details that readers won't get at first, but if they really investigate it, or
Yep,
even through conversation with me, they may ask like, why did you design the page this way? Then they'll find out, well, it's very intentional that this launch pad is outside the city and that this particular angle is being used, and you're seeing these elements or whatever, that's the beauty of storytelling. And even with like making movies, that's always fun to watch the behind the scenes
oh
type
yeah.
stuff and just see all the things that the director and the actors were thinking about when they were making a movie. So it's the same thing with this.
Well, it's that same way in the writing, right? Like for me in my novels, my goal when I wrote the first book was that it's a young adult novel, right, Chad? And so the
Hmm.
goal is that as a young adult, you should read it, enjoy the story, connect with certain characters. But then I always wanted I like the idea of it being like a lifelong read. So like maybe you
Yeah.
read it again later in life, and then all of a sudden you pick up and you relate to the other characters, or you realize that every name in the book has a meaning, or that there's
Yeah.
a practical world mythology. Like there's layers. I feel like I'm quoting Shrek right now. Like I'm like an onion. There's layers. Well, what about parfait? Everybody likes parfait. But like it's one of those things, like all those layers, seen or unseen, known or unknown, make a depth to the story. And I agree with you entirely. I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and that's what makes, masterpieces, that you go back and you experience something new every single time. You have the familiarity with the characters that you really love, but then you read through it again, you're like, oh man, I didn't catch that connection. I didn't realize that was
Yep,
there. But that's why they're masterworks, is that the author or the artist was aware of that and had put that in there
I
purposely
agree.
and wasn't afraid to put it in there even if no one caught it, because it's one of those like buried treasures that real fans and students of the art find out. They're like buried treasures, which is awesome.
I agree. I think it's that buried treasured moment. And I remember when, Harry Potter is still a huge thing. Don't get me wrong, right? It's still a very big entity. But I remember when the books, were still coming out originally, and there were books about those books. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like people were writing books about the myth and the background, and I'm like, now that's when you've got something. That people are
Yeah.
writing books about your book and about what's hidden in there.
Yep.
And I'm like, that is just amazing. And so I think, I always like the story within the story, and I like all of that. And I agree with you, Chad. I think that's what makes it really masterful, right? Not that masterful stuff can't just happen. It can. And sometimes it happens organically. And I don't want to take away from that. And I was literally about 3 hours ago talking to a student about this, that yes, some of those things are there, you know, and they quoted Bob Ross, happy accidents, right? Happy mistakes. And that's very true. Those things occur. But a level of skill and mastery happens when it's on purpose or intentional or with thought.
Yeah.
And I think that is where, when you do mostly that and then the happy accidents come in, then you get something that really resonates, something that's really magical.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of people just wait for the happy accidents and then, you know, that's kind of it.
Yeah, and I think the more practice and mastery you have over your craft, the more flexibility and skill you're able to turn those accidents into happy accidents, because you have the flexibility and the confidence to use those instead of them being a hindrance or something
100%.
that, you know, paralyzes you. So
I agree. That's one of the things I talk about very heavily in watercolor, is as you develop a level of mastery, you are then able to pick and choose when to let the watercolor be watercolor organically, right? Let the medium be the medium, and then knowing when and where to control it. Because, you know, there is a certain beauty in watercolor of just the water, you know, interacting with itself and the pigment, you know, the blooms, the dilution, you know, all that stuff, the wet on wet. But and some of that just happens. But when you get better and you get stronger at your skill, you know when and where to let that be. And I think that's the level that you want to get at.
yeah, it's similar in charcoal for me, at least. Maybe not everyone, but that's where I love to just make a mess and like spread it around and really like just let my brain kind of go and then go back in and start refining. And as a result, you have these nice areas that are nice and refined and highly detailed, but then you have this kind of wildness to it that just, you know, has some weird marks that are kind of out of place, but it gives it life. It, you know,
I
it's
agree.
just, yeah, it's beautiful. And you could do that in paint too. I've seen people paint that way, where they just, you know, they start off super loose and they have all these like random brush work everywhere, and then they tighten it up, and it's just got that combination of fluidity and emotion, but also skill and detail and realism too. So I love that.
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that, you know, to kind of wrap up this thought, it's what you and I have talked about with contemporary art and everything else. It's a skill to master and then reduce back. And it's that conscious decision making. It's not happenstance. It's conscious decision making. And there's a certain elegance that comes with that. And I'm not saying art has to be elegant, but I mean, it's, you know, it is a certain level of achievement, let's say, perhaps. And there's a quality that comes with that. Bum, 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 bum. So as Chad was talking about doing the background, working his background so that he can see really where his space shuttle stands, right? You know, he was if you're just joining us, which it looks like a number of you guys just jumped in, Chad's working on this to make sure that he has, he felt like his ship was a little simplified and, you know, kind of like cartoonish in a sense, but now he's realizing that maybe the background's going to be a lot more detailed, which creates the contrast from foreground to background. And currently on my painting, I'm kind of in that situation right now. I have these really strong figures here that I'm working on, and I have this heavy, dark, black or brown leather couch. And I realized as I've been walking past this all week, I need to get those dark values in, right? I need to get those dark values in so that I can compare it to my foreground elements to see if this rendering and these values are effective the way that I want them to be. And so, you know, Chad, you talk about working the whole piece. You and I tend to work like, you know, certain segments, but it's healthy to work the whole piece so that you can compare effectively. And so that's kind of where I'm at in my painting right now, guys. I'm kind of working in that there, but we do have an amazing question from Janice. Janice, how are you? It's wonderful to see you. I'm going to put this up on here because this is the first great question of the night. Chad, check this one out, buddy. Hi. Do you always have to tighten up? No.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, you can do whatever you want. You're the artist, right? So, it just probably just depends on your personal style or your personal approach or the message that you're trying to convey. Sometimes a nice, free-flowing, very fluid and kind of messy, I guess you could say, piece is what's needed. But it's just personal preference. So I like a little looseness around the edges, especially as I was saying before with charcoal. But I also like some tight areas too, to just kind of let your eye rest in certain areas. Sometimes if the whole thing is like really loose, there's nowhere for your eye to go. And
Yep.
so you just have to be mindful of what is the purpose of your painting or your drawing, and what do you want the viewer to focus on, and what message are you trying to
Yep.
convey. If you're just being messy because you don't know where it's going, and then you just say, well, it's just abstract, blah, blah, blah. I mean, no offense to anyone, but that's just an excuse. Like, you have to be intentional with your messiness as well. Like, so if it's going to be messy, then be messy. But if it's going to be tight, then be tight. But if you don't know what you're doing and you're just being messy for the sake of being messy because it looks cool, in my opinion, that's not that's not a fully realized piece, and it's something that you need to go back and think some more about. So yeah, it just goes back to intention, and it's kind of like, it's like people who try or attempt, and I'm guilty of this, so I'm speaking from my own personal experience. And we've talked about this before. It's like people who rely on abstraction because they started painting something realistically and it didn't work. And
Yep.
so then they're like, well, I'll just make it abstract, and that, because I'm the artist. Well, it's like, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be hypercritical sometimes, not in a degrading way, but you have to be like honest with yourself to ask yourself the question, did I intend to make this an abstract piece, or am I falling back on abstraction and looseness because what I intended to do with realism or being a bit tighter didn't work? And I don't think you should just fall back on being loose just because the way the way you're trying to tighten up is not working. I don't think that's really the effective answer. But what do you think, Seth?
Well, I think I want to be even maybe perhaps a little bit more specific if it's okay with Janice, because Janice does this beautiful organic watercolor work. It's very abstract, but the thing that I would say, Janice, is that is your intent. Like she enjoys going in. She likes the looseness and letting her emotion kind of come out into that watercolor. And so,
Hmm.
Janice, that to me is kind of what Chad is saying, is that you're going in with the mindset and the knowledge that you're purposefully going to be loose and organic and not have a plan. Because she's asked me before, Janice is a brilliant student here and a brilliant artist. And she goes, do you always have to have a plan? And I go, well, not if your intent is to not have a plan, right? Like, like
Yes.
there's a different execution, Janice, a level of execution going into that. You don't always have to have a plan, but having a plan can even help you in your abstraction, right? Like, I mean, I know that sounds weird because there is such a thing as nothingness, like stream of conscious writing, right? They say
Yep.
that there's this, the idea of stream of conscious writing. Can I just create to create? 100%. But I think a lot of modern, or I shouldn't say modern was a movement, but contemporary art is almost, I don't know. I don't know how to say it, Chad, where it's like the lack of a plan is not the plan. Does that, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're trying to pass it off as something that it's not. Whereas Janice, when I've seen your work and I've seen what you do and I know what you say and how you do it, it is well thought out, right? Internally, not necessarily like step one is this and I'm doing that. You're letting it be what it's meant to be with that intent. And I think that's the difference. So in my opinion, no, you don't always have to tighten up. However, everybody has their personal preferences. Like Chad said, like if Matt jumps on, he usually jumps on. He's a hyper realist. He loves hyper realism. There's probably going to be more tight work than loose. In fact, I would say there's probably not a whole lot of loose work in their period, right? In hyper realism, it's always very rendered. It's always very tight, right, Chad? I mean,
Uh,
even the things that you would think would be loose and painterly tend to not be. So I agree with Chad in the sense of knowing what you're trying to achieve, knowing what you're trying to do is I'm going to quote G.I. Joe here, half the battle.
yeah. And so, like, what I'm drawing right now is part of a graphic novel comic book series. So I'm telling a story. So I'm intentionally being very tight with this.
Yep.
Whereas, sometimes if I, if I'm at the live drawing, the figure drawing on Thursday, or if I'm doing some portrait work or some plein air work with charcoal, it's going to be much more expressive and more loose because my intention is very different. This I want to be very clearly communicate very clearly. Now, can I communicate very clearly with a very loose style? Absolutely. And there are artists that do that, and they do it very abstractly, but they're still able to communicate something. That's just not my personal style when it comes to this kind of work. But I do like the flexibility of abstraction and more of a loose style depending on what I'm doing if I'm working on other projects. So
Yep. We've got Griff's Art Studio saying yes, multiple exclamation points. I agree. Matt did jump on, thank goodness, because I name dropped you just a second ago. He says 100% agree. He's like, sorry, I was using Mario Page. I've been here the whole time. Oh, wonderful. Well, great to see you, Matt. But yes, I mean, that's the thing. And Janice, what a great question. You don't always have to tighten up. But I do want to say this, though, Janice, and Matt and Griff, I'm curious to see what you guys think. But here's the thing.
It's the same person.
Same person.
Yeah.
Sorry. Apologies. I just put that together.
That's all right.
I get excited very easily if you guys can't tell. But the one thing I will say, Janice, is I think having a plan of what you want the viewer to see, and sometimes in full abstraction, it's just the whole experience, right? But I think in a lot of situations, we do have something that we want the viewer to interact with on some level. It could be a color. It could be a pattern, like Mondrian's, patterns and colors. It could be a focal point of a person's face or a key element. I think keeping that in mind is always healthy, because then your execution comes with that in sight, if you will, right? And so knowing what you're trying to achieve, as Chad said, he knows what he's trying to achieve with his novels, right? I know what I'm trying to achieve with my paintings, or in this specific painting. And so keeping in mind, what is it I'm trying to have the viewer experience through my artwork? Maybe it is the sense of freedom. Maybe it is the sense of no plan, right? And maybe that's good. But I think very rarely is art just for us. Sometimes it is, and that's wonderful. But I think, you are expecting people to interact with it at some level, right? And so what is it you want them to interact with, and how are you going to achieve that? Or we can just jump up and down on a trampoline and drag a marker across a wall.
Oh, yeah.
Or tape a banana to a wall. Which I still wonder if I should write an essay on that or not.
Yeah, of course you should.
I don't want to, because I'm afraid it's not even going to be closely to what it is, and then I'm going to be really disappointed.
Well,
or maybe the buyer, he'll jump on and be like, "That's totally what I meant."
No, I think you should write it, even if it doesn't turn out the way you want, because it makes it the next one better.
That is true. That is absolutely true. I had a student tell me that I should not write it, that I should just do a video of it. And I was
That
like,
you should what?
Just do a video of it.
Oh, yeah. That would be good.
Yeah, Nikki was like, I think you should just do a video of that. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah. It could be part of your art history.
Ooh.
Yeah, talking about contemporary art.
That'll be, but the hard part is I don't think I could do that one in a minute.
Oh, you could. You just need to collect your thoughts.
Not be me. Not do us. The long answer, right? Not do us.
That's right. You'll have to write it and then edit and then write it and then edit and write and edit and write and edit until you get it down to the Van Gogh video.
That's true. That is very true. But yes, I do want to give a big shout out to Janice. Janice, thanks for kicking off the comments today. We're so grateful that you joined us and watch with us. It's amazing. Matt, so glad you're on here. He says, I prefer a blank canvas. He goes, which I saw in the Chicago Art Museum.
Yeah, that's true. Which art museum in Chicago did you go to? Was it, because we're actually going to Chicago in the fall, and I want to go to the art museum, and I think there's the Art Institute of Chicago, I think, is the big museum there. Is that the one you went to, Matt? with the lions in the front? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. I'll look it up real quick.
One of these days, we're going to get a producer that's just going to look everything up for us.
Yeah.
Because it happened to me and you a lot. We're like, what was that? What was the name of that movie? What was that director? What was that writer? One of these days, we're going to be sponsored by MH Paints. We'll name drop. Maybe some Alani Nu or Red Bull. Make sure you go out and get your witch's brew, guys.
You're funny. All right, let's see.
Every now and then I get a giggle.
Art Institute of Chicago. Yes, that is the one. It's got lines out front.
Man, you were on it, Chad. You knew it.
Well, it's just Google. It's all AI nowadays. Beginning of the end of the world, you know.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, at least we can make some beautiful art until then.
Yep.
Maybe mine will survive the nuclear blast. What about you? Somebody will pick up your graphic novel in the future and be like, what a world they lived in. Da, 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 da. Honestly, I don't even like joking about that stuff.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. Or did you see the news about how like that one professor thinks that the flying object in space is a mothership?
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, Fallout. Exactly, Matt. Fallout. Da, 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 da. No, on a side note, I am very pleased with how the progression of this painting series is going. If you guys remember, I started these paintings on the VAAS Live, and I was very intimidated by the painting of Cora, which was the first one I did. And Chad and Thomas and my wife Caitlin and everybody here, all the students here, which were just absolutely amazing, continue to encourage me. They're like, because I don't draw people and I don't paint people often, right? That's not my main focal point of what I work on. And I've really been wanting to do these kind of paintings in the series and really push myself. And I was very fortunate to have the studio camaraderie, to have, the compatriots, if you will, that were encouraging and motivating. And I'm really seeing it come to fruition in this painting, right, Chad? Like, I love my other paintings. They're great. I'm very pleased with them. But I feel like my skill is getting better in my use of oils, because I really only started in oils again, 5-6 years ago, which to me is not that long. And I've also recently only did these last 3 paintings in the grisaille process, probably since a little bit after college is the last time I had done it. So I really feel like my level of execution is getting better. And as Chad mentioned not too long ago, it's that practice and that repetition that is healthy. And I'm really grateful for it. And I'm really enjoying it. And I'm hoping that this one continues to turn out the way that it is, because I really like it. And I'm really enjoying the whole process. So thank you guys, to all of you viewers out there, and to everybody here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, both the team members as well as the students. Thank you guys for all the encouragement and love, because it's been a pleasure. It's been a joy to get to work on this.
Well, you're welcome.
I know it. So in doing the art history in a minute, I was not aware, and just making sure that my history was accurate and all those kinds, I was not aware of the theory that they thought Glenn could have potentially cut his ear.
Yeah, I was not aware of that either. That was really interesting.
I mean, I know Gilgan was kind of a hothead, right? And he and Van Gogh had a tumultuous relationship. I think a lot of people who study art know that to some extent, Chad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I knew that Gauguin was rumored to have like worn a sword, like he would have a sword. But I never really studied that too much. But yeah, finding out that they think maybe perhaps he flicked his ear with the tip of the sword and cut the lobe off or something. I'm like, well, to me, that actually kind of makes sense. Not going to lie, right? That could have potentially happened, because I could see Gauguin pestering Van Gogh. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like pestering him and putting the sword tip up next to his face or something, and then flicking it up, and then cutting the lobe off or something. And so I think that's pretty interesting. And I thought that was a nice little tidbit in that one little minute segment. But I could very well seeing that happen. If you've ever had an older brother that is a turd to you, any younger brother is going to know that very well could have happened.
Yeah, for sure. I also remember reading, I think it was in his letters, or maybe I saw it somewhere, that at the same time Van Gogh was not easy to live with.
Yes.
And there's one scene where I think they included Gauguin's letter in the book that I have, the collection of his letters.
Yep.
And I think I remember reading like Van Gogh would like stand over the bed while Gauguin was sleeping and just stand there and stare at him. Like,
Yeah.
how spooky is that?
I'd cut your ear off too. No offense. I'd be like,
Yeah, yeah. If someone was doing that to me, I'd move out immediately, and yeah, I definitely would be like, you're not my friend anymore.
Yep. Yep. Well, and I think that's the thing is, like, and I really thought about this, Chad, which is weird because, one of the big points is that he gave the piece of ear or the entire ear, right? But the piece of the ear to, a lady in a brothel. And I'm sitting there thinking, I could very well see that as like almost like a masculine thing almost of like, look, I had my ear cut off, like, and I'm still, I don't know. It's just, I think the myth only gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We'll never truly know. And I just think it's wild. It's absolutely wild.
Or maybe, I mean, they were both known to go to the brothel. Maybe they were fighting over that woman, and maybe
could have been.
Yeah, maybe he just was like, "Look, I lost my ear for you," kind of thing, or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Yeah, it's wild, right? I mean, but and that's kind of how in the segment, the ear is really irrelevant. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
And it's become this so big thing. The ear is really irrelevant because over what I can't remember 2,000 artworks in just 10 years.
Yeah.
And to have literally turned the art world on its head in history, that's more important than some kind of crazy ear story.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to think how much these guys produced. I mean, say what you want about Picasso, but like tens of thousands of pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's because they're working on multiple pieces, but they're also producing multiple pieces every day. And so it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, even at an abstract level, that's a healthy dose of workload.
Yep. That's, for a lot of those guys, that's painting for most of the day too. I don't have that kind of stamina. I get kind of bored pretty quick, and I got to work on something else. And
well, we also have a ton. I mean, in this life, I mean, that's why they went to the brothels. What else were they going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, Janice goes, "I lost my ear for you." She's dying laughing. She thinks that's, I mean, yes, Janice, I agree too. Boy, if that's not a pickup line, I don't know what is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I lost my ear for you in a battle with a crazy man and a sword. That's amazing. That's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's a lot more distractions and, but I mean, it's, I think about, so I have one coming out soon. I don't want to ruin it. The next one is well, not the next one, but one of them coming up is Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. And I know this sounds crazy, Chad. That was done in a 4-year time span.
Yeah.
And to some people, they may think, well, 4 years is a really long time.
Nope.
But if you look at the quality of work and the just everything, I'm sitting there going, that was done in just 4 years.
Yeah. And how much of it? Yeah. And on top of that, just even building the scaffolding to get up there. Like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
People don't realize how long because they didn't have the materials and the equipment we do. So.
Well, I mean, I literally thought about, and I know it's a whole different thing. So I don't want any comments, chastising me, telling me, well, that's not the same. I know it's not the same. But like I watched a show about the renovations of Notre Dame, right? And you look at this, how long it dealt with the scaffolding there, and you're like, holy crap. I mean, like that's modern day. And I know that's a structure in a building that's unsafe. And like, I get it, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, don't anybody pick on me, but it's just 4 years in the era that it was done. That's even crazier. Yeah. And to Matt's point, you know, mixing your own egg tempura and painting most of it on your back while the paint drips in your eyeballs. And the whole thing is just insane. Truly, you know, I think earned the name Il Divino, you know. Oh, how nice it is to paint. Such a joy. Oh, I missed an opportunity there. Dang it. Darn it.
What were you going to
Boy,
say?
how I love painting. Such a joy. Bob Ross's TV show, The Joy of Painting.
Oh, yeah.
I missed one. I had a set up there, and I totally blew it. I've got about 5 or 6 other paintings that I really want to get to. And for me, it's motivation to work on all of my current work, you know?
Yep.
It's like I have this game plan of I got to get to this. I want to get to that. And to me, it's exhilarating and motivating. Having other plans for other projects, Chad, is that exhilarating or daunting or both?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I totally love it. And we talked a little bit about that, I think, at the beginning, or because you had mentioned about me working on
Yes.
my other large charcoal, and because I'm working on my secret project. And while I was working on that, I came up with an idea for another work that I really want to get to. So I was like, man, in order for me to get to that one, I've got like 2 or 3 in my head that I want to work on, but I need to finish these ones that I've started. So I was like, man, I need to get back in there and finish that landscape. And my problem too is I was looking at the landscape and I was playing around with the changing part of it too, and I'm like, oh gosh, what am I doing? So there's so at the bottom in the middle, I want to put like this little silhouetted figure and this beam of light coming across, just highlighting this small figure like surrounded by all this chaos.
I love that.
But then I was playing around with, what if I made it a little more abstract and like put some kind of object right there that had a symbolic meaning? And then I thought, well, I could do like my abstract stuff and put like a symbol right there, just like this juxtaposition of like this realistic landscape and then this like abstracted symbol together. And then I thought I could put like a skull, but then I was like, skulls that like they're just so overdone. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I just kept running through all this stuff, and I don't know what I'm going to do in that middle part, but we'll see. We'll figure it out when I get closer. So
we've got a question from Matt. I think this one is for you. It says, will this be your first hyper realistic piece? I don't know if he's referencing your landscape, because I think Matt knows most of your work.
I think it might be talking to you, because my landscape's not hyper realistic at all. So
well, Matt, if you're talking to me, bud, I don't think this is hyper realistic. To be completely honest, I think it's
he's talking about your portrait.
Okay, yeah, I actually think it's very, very loose and painterly. Actually, I mean, maybe I'm crazy. You guys can tell me if I'm crazy. I don't think it's hyper realistic, if that makes sense. I think it's based in realism, right? Like I want it to look like my wife and I want it to look like my daughter to a certain extent. But I think the piece is still relatively painterly. Now, granted, it's a larger piece, and certain things happen when you paint large. But I think there's a lot of other painters who paint much more hyper realistic than I do, and I think there is a level of realism. But this is probably one of the more Well, no, I don't want to say that because Chad, do you remember my show jumping horse
Yeah.
from my old Kentucky home? I think that was probably the most realistic piece I've painted.
Yep.
I think that one probably is even more realistic than this piece. Now, this one is the most, to your point though, Matt, this is the most realistic oil painting of humans I've done. I will say that. And I like the idea of picking and choosing where to be loose and where to be painterly. And if you look at some of the folds, if you could see this in person, I think this painting looks very different in person, Matt. I think a lot of artwork looks very different in person. But if you were to see this piece in person, I think you'd see that the folds and the blankets and all that stuff are pretty loose. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Chad, or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't think it's hyper realistic. I think it definitely is realistic for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, and the reason being is that you're not trying to recreate a photo like exact.
Correct.
There's a lot more freedom. It's like you always say, you got to be better than your reference. So you're using your reference as the launching pad for the your actual painting. And that, this is a good little topic discussion, because one of the things that Matt and I talked about recently was the difference between, when you do hyperrealism, the temptation is just to take a photograph and reproduce that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the problem with that, though, is that it can become very, I don't know what the word is. I want to say boring, but that's not really the word. Just kind of, it's at face value. It's like someone could see that and be like, well, why don't you just give me a photograph? Like, I appreciate that you were able to draw that. That shows a lot of technical skill and something that a lot of people can't do. But that's as far as it goes. So when someone looks at that piece, they're admiring the technique and not so much the work of art as a work of art.
Right.
And there's a difference between that and then discovering your voice as an artist and being able to do something that's hyper realistic, but is not just copying a photograph. And so Matt and I were talking about that because there is a difference in that. And so I was showing him an example between, if you had a family photograph and you did this hyper realistic drawing of it, it's great and it's amazing. But what if you took that same skill and were able to maybe drew someone's emotion, or drew it at a different camera angle, or included some other aspect of that family and what that meant to them? Like, it would have so much more meaning than just reproducing what you see. And so when we're talking about hyperrealism versus realism and that kind of thing, and being better than your references and that kind of thing, you want to use references. You don't have to, but you want to use references as a way to kind of help your skill and hone in what you're doing. But at the same time, you don't want to be like married to that reference, and you want to be able to put in a bit of your own message, and you want to be able to change things. So that's one thing, Matt, that I didn't mention in our conversation, privately, is that, when it comes to like editing photographs, you really have to develop as an artist to the point where you don't need the camera or the computer to be able to edit the photograph. You need to be able to edit that yourself. And so even like contrasts or tones or things like that, you have to develop that skill through lots and lots of practice, so that you can change a tone without needing the photo reference for it. Or find a photo of the kind of tone that you want for that thing and try to emulate that. Now,
And then plug it in.
Yeah. Now, when you're working hyper realistically, it's much more difficult to do that, because you're trying to get it to look like the photo.
And it'll seem out of place too.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas when you're working realistically, you have the freedom to be able to do, a little bit more flexible. So.
Agreed. And Janice asked, and Matt actually gave, a good little response. Janice asked, what does "you have to be better than your reference" mean? And Matt says, Janice, the difference between technical skill and style. Yes, but if I may, I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit more. And Chad, you did a nice job of kind of hinting at that, which is you have to know when and where to modify to make your work of art better. right? So oftentimes our Thomas, who's been on a number of times, he doesn't like really drawing from, I mean, he does. We all do. He doesn't like drawing from a flat reference because you're taking something that was 3D, now it's 2D, and then you're drawing it 3D and you're trying to manipulate it, which often you have to push and pull values like what Chad was talking about. But Janice, a little bit further on that, it's, you know, if you're trying to convey something and your reference doesn't do it, you shouldn't have to just scrap it. You should be better to be able to modify and change it as an artist so that you can go beyond your reference, right? So here's a good example. I may be taking, let's say that I'm going to do a sculpture of a nude figure. Let's just say that. And I take references of a model in the nude to then paint that figure. However, in my painting, the lighting of a certain segment may not have achieved what it needed to achieve in my photo reference. To Chad's point, I could either go back and re-photograph and get a better example of that lighting, or I understand form, dimension, light and shadow, chiaroscuro and sfumato enough that I can then modify it to make it look the way I want without having to rely solely on that reference. You can go as further and say, well, in Chad's example, he pulled up references of ships, right? Chad, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But he's being better than his reference because he's doing something completely fantastical. So that model reference is like a very real thing. But even in conceptual or imaginative work, you can take a reference and then utilize it to create something else. So Alvarez actually used to say all the time, Alvarez took a lot of photo references. He drew a lot from life, but in his paintings, he wanted to be better than his reference. And so you have to be better than what you're referencing because you're the artist, you're the creator. You're not just emulating, as Chad says, or replicating a reference. You are using that as a launching point or a guide. And if you wanted it to be exactly like your reference, then why are you painting anything? Because you already have the reference. There's no need to create something else because you already have it. And so that to me is what we mean by you need to be better than your reference. And I hope that answers the question. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I love Matt's question here. He goes, how does this happen practically with hyperrealism portrait artists? Okay, here's an example. This may or may not be a great example. And Matt, I am not a hyper-realistic portrait artist. So perhaps maybe someday we can get a hyper-realistic portrait artist on the live stream and they can answer their own technical aspect. But I will tell you this. There was one time when I was drawing my grandfather. And my grandfather had aged dramatically and he had developed Alzheimer's. Okay. So, and I hope nobody experiences this. I hope nobody else has had to go through this, but there is a blankness in the eye of that person when they're having an episode of Alzheimer's or dementia. And if you've ever experienced it, you can't really describe it. Does that make sense? Because the eyes are still there. The eyes are still seeing. And if I were to paint the eyes the way that they are, hyper realistic, you're not going to get the emptiness that comes from behind those eyes. Does that make sense, Matt? And so I have to be better than the reference and modify those eyes, whether it's lighting, shading, intensity, dullness, whether it's the shape or the form, to convey the emptiness that I wanted to get from that moment, right? Because even in the hyperrealism, you're not going to get that blank kind of stare. So I had to modify slightly because I didn't want him to look empty. Chad, am I making sense here? Does that, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, where it's like, sometimes you have to pick and choose, even if it's accurate, right? There's a difference between being truly accurate and achieving what you want to achieve. I could have drawn that portrait 100% accurately, Matt, right? Like I could have drawn it 100% accurately, but it wouldn't have conveyed the emotion I was trying to get out of that work. And that's maybe the way I can kind of describe it.
Yeah, and the only way to be able to do that is you have to know how to draw eyes really, really well.
Right.
Because you're basically having to reinterpret what you see and still make it look real. But you can't do that unless you know how to draw eyes without seeing a photograph. Or you can look at a photograph of an eye. It's not going to be that person's eyes. So you're not going to be able to copy it 100%. but you can take elements from that eye that you see and import it into the drawing that you're trying to make. And that's what I was doing with my landscape drawing that I'm working on. It's not an actual real landscape. It's portions and pieces of references that I found, but even those references are not exact references. I just kind of see what does a mountain look like? What does a volcano look like? What do waves look like? And I just try to recreate that. But yeah, so hopefully that helps.
I think, it's one of those things too, where, when some of my mentors used to say it, when Alvarez used to say it, as a young artist, I don't know if I got it, right? It's kind of like that old saying, and I say this a lot in my class. It's like that old saying, Chad, where they say, draw what you see, not what you think you see.
Yeah.
And I'm always constantly going, when I was younger, I would always go, I'm drawing what I see. I'm staring right at it. I know what I'm looking at. But it's the idea that the mind has a preconceived notion. We do a lot of apple renderings in my drawing 101 class. We have a preconceived notion of what an apple is, right? And so your mind convinces you that you're drawing what you see, even though you're drawing what you've seen.
Yes.
Right. And that's a very big challenge. And Chad actually does a phenomenal job of drawing from reference cast. And Chad, you can articulate this. You've experienced it a lot, even in the classes here at VAAS, where even if you're set right in front of it, you've got brilliant lighting on it. It hasn't freaking moved in an hour and a half. And you're going, I'm staring right at it. Why can I not get this? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, a student will bring in a drawing and they'll think that it looks exactly like the picture. And then I'll take a look at it, or someone else. It doesn't have to be me, but you look at it and you'll be like, no, that's not quite there. And they're like, no way, it's exactly. And then you'll show them and you'll say, well, measure this compared to this and look at this. And they're like, oh man. And it happens to everyone. It happens to me all the time. You look at something you're working on so much that you can't see it objectively. And so that's where critique is really helpful. And we've talked about that before. But it's also really helpful to walk away from a piece for a while and then come back with fresh eyes. And then usually whatever is standing out, that's the part that you need to fix. But yeah.
If Janus, if you're still on, you've seen this happen even in the watercolor classes. There's times when people bring in works and, and obviously we give a lot of positive feedback and stuff. But then there's times where somebody will go, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that. That gets said quite a bit. It's like, oh, I didn't even see that. I didn't even recognize that, because you are so close to it. And that's why if you're in, mine and Chad's classes, or even Sarah's, we talk a lot about getting removed from your piece, giving it a week, come back with fresh eyes, like Chad said, or give it distance, step away. If you're constantly working at it, inches from your face, you're not going to see the piece as a whole. I did something today, Chad, I have not done before in an acrylic painting class. I had my student come up right next to their painting and put their eye like inches from the piece and had them paint a section. I said, now focus on that. And we painted it for a good 5-10 minutes, right? Like very close. And then I said, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about this little section that we're working on? And they looked at me and they go, oh, I feel really, really good about it. It looks really, really good. I said, okay, great. And then we stepped back like 3 feet. And then you should have seen the look on their face, because they're like, oh my gosh, it doesn't even fit the rest of the painting.
Yeah.
And I said, exactly. You were looking at one little isolation and not how it relates to the whole.
Yep.
And I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, that happened today in my class. So I had a student in drawing 101 class, a young man. He's I think 11 or whatever, and we were working on measuring, and we were using the grid method, where you basically, if you have your drawing that you're working from and you draw a grid over it, and then you have a fresh piece of paper and you draw the exact same grid, and then you essentially go from square to square and you draw out what you're, that picture. And he was going at it, he was drawing, and I was like, hey, before you go shading that, I can see right now it's already wrong. And he's like, no, what are you talking about? So I had to literally I took a piece of paper, cut out a 1-inch square, and then put it over one of the squares. And I said, now look at this square. And then I put it over his drawing. I look at your square, and they are not the same at all. and it's just so crazy how how your eye can trick you. You just think, oh no, this looks exactly like it. And yeah, then you do something like that, and it's very obvious that you often can't see. You start not seeing things. So yeah.
Well, and I put this comment up on the screen, Chad. I don't know if you see it there from Janice. You know, she talks about this is a trick that a lot of people will do so that your mind doesn't see it that way, right? And
Yeah.
you've seen this has become a popular thing now in, like, you know, America's Got Talent and all these other places where they'll work on the painting. Whoops, I just kicked my thing. They'll work on the painting upside down or sideways and then flip it at the very end.
Yeah.
And one thing I always tell people is, remember, those are rehearsed. Right,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, like, they've done that. They're not doing that on the fly randomly. They've done that 50, 60 times probably, enough that it's a rehearsal and it is a show, right? But to Janice's point, yes, you can do that. And that is a great way to make your mind see shape and line and form outside of what the object is. But even then, you still have to look at it separately, right? It's a good trick, but I would encourage people that you want to get beyond having to do that. You want to train yourself so that you're not having to flip it upside down or reverse or whatever. And that's where, you know, drawing from sight, right? Drawing from life, measurement, sight measurement, all of that helps you go beyond having to do that. It's not a bad thing. I'm not knocking it. I think it's a great technique. I think it's a good practice. But Chad, in my opinion, that's where you want to develop the skill, develop the vision to go beyond having to do that. And that's really training. It's no different than physical training. If you haven't ran a mile in 20 years, are you going to be able to go and run a mile that day? Most likely not.
Nope.
You're going to crawl, walk, run, right? The old methodology of crawl, walk, run. You're going to start out by jogging or maybe walking briskly, then moving into a light jog. And then, you know, and then segments. You're going to run a segment, take a break a segment, run a segment, and then eventually you are going to get to a final point where you will run that marathon or run that mile. I'm sorry. But then even if you continue beyond that, not only are you going to be able to run the mile, you're going to run the mile faster and easier, and your body's going to resonate with that even more. And so, Janice, yes, that's a good skill, but don't stay there. Don't stay walking the mile. Learn to jog and then learn to run and then pace yourself. If that's your goal. Some people don't have that goal, right? Some people say, I don't care if I ever run a mile or not. Great. That's okay too. But I think that, you know, relying on that is complacency. I'm not a fan of complacency, and that's okay if other people are. And that's just my opinion, but that's not a bad practice, Janice.
Yeah, I agree. I think the stuff you see on like America's Got Talent and all that, that's smoke and mirrors, you know, that kind of stuff is, you know, fad stuff. It's like when people do the spin paintings and all that kind of stuff, you know, they're cool first couple times or whatever, and then after the, you know, 100th TikTok video, someone doing it, you're just like, okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, to your point, Seth, I mean, it is a good technique to help you get to the next level, but it's not something that you should be married to, that you have to do every single time. And yeah, a little practice and you'll be able to move beyond it.
Well, and here's the thing. The argument could then be, well, Seth, you're using a grid for your painting here. You're right. I am using a grid, but I'm using a grid to help me stay in scale and proportion. I don't have to have this grid. And it helps expedite my process. I don't need this grid. And I'm not making this up, Chad. And I think you've seen me draw. I'm developed enough as a draftsperson that I draw this freehand. I grid myself out to keep me in scale, and then I freehand draw this. I'm not going inch by inch, square by square, which is a skill, and that's a talent, that's a practice. But even if I didn't have this grid, I could draw this pretty daggone close. It would probably take me 2 or 3 times longer. Other people go, well, why don't you just project it and trace it? Some artists do. Some people do. But what I don't like is I don't like the rigidity of a trace. The tracing is so rigid, and I don't feel like it's as loose. Whereas this is where you're talking about, Matt, the difference between hyperrealism or photorealism and my painterly interpretation. This is my interpretation of my wife and daughter. I am not drawing them exact, right? It is not going to be a perfect representation of my wife and daughter. It's going to be close enough that it has their likeness, but I'm picking and choosing my lines and my shapes and my forms, and I'm freehand drawing them. I do want it to have their likeness, so the grid helps me keep it there. Does that make sense?
Yep, for sure.
Boy, man, you guys are getting me on a soapbox tonight, man. Woo!
We got some other comments here that I'm missing. Let me grab my mouse here. Okay, it says, oh yeah, we just talked about Janice's comment about drawing upside down. Oh, one thing I did want to say about that, I'll put her comment back up again. What about drawing from a reference or apple upside down to focus on lines? That's one of the things that we do in our charcoal class is I have them draw without using lines. And the point of that is to force, and I've done this in drawing 101 too with a pencil, where you are drawing the tones instead. And that is forcing you to look at the shape and the form of an object rather than the contours. Because so many times artists, especially when they first start, they just do a contour drawing and then try to shade that in. And it's like, well, no, I mean, yes, that's good. And you can do that. And I do that from time to time as well. But it's better if you learn the form and the shapes and the shading and the tones and measure all those first. And then let your lines and your contours and your outlines, let those emerge out of your drawing, and makes it so much more real. And yeah, there's just a softer quality to your drawing. But yeah, I agree. Any kind of techniques like that will definitely help. Let's see here.
And,
Matt says, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to add one last thing to that. The other thing I want to point out is that everybody digests and learns differently, right? So there are certain techniques and skills and methods that resonate with certain individuals that don't resonate with others, right? And we have to remember that's okay too, guys and gals. That's all right also. I don't want to sit here and bash anything because it may not be effective for Chad, but it might be effective for me, or it may not be effective for Chad and I. It may be effective for Matt or Janice or whoever. Keep that in mind. But I think reliance on something is what holds you back. And you don't want to become too reliant on those things.
Yeah, for sure. Matt says one of the top hyperrealism artists in the world said that hyperrealism is married to photography and he's trying to get better at photography. In fact, he follows photographers rather than or more than hyperrealism artists. That way he can learn photography better. So yes, I remember you saying that to me, Matt, through a text, but I think it's the same with, like, for me, for example, you know, if I'm drawing comic books, a lot of times people are always asking me, who's your favorite comic book artist? Who's your favorite author? What's your favorite comic book? I honestly, I don't read a whole lot of comic books. Like, I'd rather get my influence from movies or from sci-fi artists or from sometimes I'll look at concept art and that kind of thing. And that helps me more than reading a comic book. But that's just me personally. Like, when I was first learning how to draw, I was in comic books all the time. And the only negative of that for me was I had to go back and relearn a lot of stuff because I was just picking up all the style of all these artists that I was emulating rather than finding my own voice. And I also picked up their errors as well. So I had to go back and relearn anatomy and perspective and those kind of things. So that's the only negative of that. But I'm saying that because this artist is saying he follows photography rather than other hyper realistic artists. And you would think, oh no, they want to look at what other artists are doing. But to his point, like, by following photographers, it's a different medium. So they're going to be doing different things with what they're with their tools and with their subject matter and that kind of thing, which can inspire you to then draw different things as well. So I actually agree with him. I think that what he's saying is really good advice. I think you should even try to find something way different than hyperrealism and see how that can influence your art for the better and give you new and different ideas. So yeah, I think
the other thing is, I mean, Chad, hyperrealism is a technique.
Yeah.
It's a technique, not a subject matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'll share with everybody something that changed my life as a creator. And I like to write, and I wish someday to actually be a writer, right? Like, you know, like to actually, you know what I mean, Chad? Like to be a functioning writer and to do book series and stuff. But there was a saying that I heard from a very famous author, And it threw me for a loop because I used to read 2 or 3 books a week. Right, Chad?
Mm.
And I was like, man, this is going to help me, figure out my writing style. And it's going to help me, come up with my process and my thoughts. And that's true. That's not bad. But what they said was, they go, I don't read other people's books. And the interviewer said, well, why not? And this got me. They go, because if I'm reading other people's books, I'm not writing my own.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, how much time do I spend a week reading other people's work when I could have probably written, how many thousands of words on my own?
Yeah.
And that really led me to the idea of how much time am I wasting? Either, and it's okay. Leisure time is good, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying that. I enjoy listening to movies, watching shows, all this stuff. But instead of watching, 5 back-to-back TV shows that are a half hour long, at this stage of my life, I was sitting there saying, I just need to watch 1 half-hour show and then draw or write for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Instead of watching 5 episodes, because I'm never going to produce the stuff that I want to produce if I'm consuming everybody's things, which led me to my statement that I tell my nieces and nephews, and I tell my daughters, and I tell my students, it's okay to be a consumer. But don't just be a consumer, be a creator.
Yep. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. And I do agree with your kind of caveat, because that would be one thing I would say is, like, for example, right now, a friend of mine and myself, we get together once a month and we talk about and work on writing projects. So I've got a little novel idea that I'm trying to work on. It's a dystopian novel, and I don't do a ton of writing. I mean, I've written quite a few things in my life, but right now I don't do a ton of writing. And as part of that, we're both reading other authors in
Right.
our particular area. Partially because I've never written anything like a novel or anything that large before. So it's helpful for me to read, someone that's done that and something that's accomplished, and see what kind of techniques they use and that kind of thing. So I think there is definitely a place for that. But at the same time, I think, to your point, if you spend all your time doing the research and doing all that kind of stuff, then you never get around to writing. And it's so much easier to say, oh, I'm doing research, when really all you need to do is just sit down and write. And it's not going to be that great. And that's why you write. You write more and more and more, and you rewrite and you edit and that kind of thing. And eventually it gets better. You're not going to be able to read your way into becoming a great writer. And it's the same thing with art. You're not going to be able to, go to another art museum and stare at another art book and all of that. It's helpful, but you're not going to be able to do that and become a great artist. You become a great artist by making art. And so, reading biographies of artists is great and helpful and inspiring, but at the end of the day, it's putting paint to canvas or a pencil to a paper that's really going to be the most effective way of growing.
Well, I'll give an even more contemporary example. Well, I guess actually all those are contemporary examples. But I have a ton of students, and I have, one of my nephews who at one point was like, I want to be a video game designer. Great. But just playing video games
Yes.
is not going to help you become a video game designer.
Yep.
Now, is it healthy to play video games, to know what kind of genre and mechanics and style and everything else? Sure. But if you're spending 400 hours on Skyrim, what could you have achieved by playing Skyrim for even, let's say, 100 hours of Skyrim, and then putting 300 hours into making your own game or learning coding or modeling or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much could you have achieved in 300 hours?
Well, it's like people trying to break into the comic book industry. They're always talking about all the books that they want to make. But the question that the editors are always going to ask is, where are your books? Let me see them. Let me see what you've drawn. Let me see what you've written. Like, show me what you've published. Even if it's self-published, what have you actually done? And if all you have to say is, well, I want to, and I'm going to, well, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean anything. Like, go do it.
What does Yoda say?
Yeah, there is no try. There's only do. And so you're exactly right. Like, I have that conversation with my daughter all of the time.
Well, and I think it's easy. There's so much, and look, I need escapism. right? I need sometimes to just take a breather from life. And I think everybody does. Life can be challenging, and there's lots of scares and fears, and there's lots of stressors and all this stuff. And life can be very hard. And some people's lives are truly difficult, right, Chad? I mean, there's a lot of sadness and sin and a lot of, bad things in this life. And even if they're not bad, there's some that are just challenging. And I'm not saying that escapism to a certain extent is bad. But what I am saying is, if you are trying to achieve a goal, if you are trying to create, if you're trying to produce, then constantly consuming will not help you get there. It's not going to get you to the end result that you truly, desperately want. And that's what Chad just said. You have to do it. You have to be willing to have the courage to say, no, I'm not just going to consume all of this at this hour rate. I'm going to put this time, because before you know it, you blink. And then you get discouraged because you go, well, there's no time. First off, there's always time until the Lord takes you. And you got to do with it what you can. And I'm not good at it. I fail at it miserably. But do the best you can if you're trying to create and share. You can do it. You can do it. You just got to do it. You are capable. You are able. You are intelligent enough. You are skilled enough. And if you're not skilled enough or know enough, then find out, research it, take classes, take lessons, ask friends, like Chad's doing with his buddy. Get together, talk about writing, experience it. Do what you got to do to achieve the dreams that you want to achieve. There's no time like the present. Do it. Take that class. Find that friendship. Write the mentor. Write the expert. Do those things so that you can achieve those goals, because you can. I promise you, you can.
Man, we got you all fired up tonight.
Sorry, I know it. I'm so sorry, Chad.
No, it's great.
Ugh.
That's the coach coming out in you.
Yeah, I guess that's true. yeah, I know it. If any of my players are on, any of my former players on, they're sitting here going, "Oh Lord, coach is on it. Coach is going again." Like, oh my gosh. Here we go. All right, guys, get a bucket. Everybody sit down. I do believe that, though, Chad. I really do.
So we've got another question here. Well, Janice first says, true, I spend too much time looking at artists' work on Instagram, and I would totally identify and agree with you. I do a lot of that myself, and I sit there and I'll look at these both comic book artists and also fine artists, and I'll sit there and I'll see all the paintings and drawings they've done and the shows that they're doing, and I sit there and I think, man, I don't have enough to even do a show myself, and I've been doing this for years. And then I think, well, the only way you can do that is get off this Instagram and go draw. So so I totally agree with you. And that's the difficulty of like Instagram. It's designed to get you in on it and to stay on it. And so that's such a hard battle because Instagram is inspiring, especially if you've got it set up the right way. And
100%.
yeah, and if
it can be a phenomenal tool.
Yeah, exactly. It can be inspiring. You can see what other people are doing, but you have to have the discipline to put it down and go do your own thing. And on the opposite end too, when you post stuff that you've done, it can be a real temptation to be like, I've got to get people to click on it and like it and all that. And if they don't, then I'm not very good, or it's just discouraging. It's like, no, don't care about that stuff. Like, yeah, that's not worth worrying about all that. Just go draw. So, or paint or whatever.
A perfect example of that, and I'm gonna open up here a little bit. I absolutely thought that Vincent Van Gogh video was great. I loved it. I thought it was a great idea to do the art history stuff. I thought it was fun. I had a good time. I thought it was well produced. I thought it was a great little 60-second video. Do you know how many views we have on YouTube, Chad?
No, I have no idea.
1.
Wow, really?
1 view on YouTube. Now, we have some views on Facebook and Instagram and other platforms, but I'm sitting there going, man, this is going to be a great video for YouTube. I'm like, this is going to help our YouTube channel grow, because all of our other platforms have grown pretty well. YouTube has not grown very well. We don't have as many subscribers on YouTube, and I really want YouTube to be a good platform because I think it's a good platform for artists and it's a good platform for the Academy. And literally I posted it and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's going to get some traction and like, this is going to be good. And what's funny is I've been working now for the last, 48 hours or so, or however long it's been since I posted it. And I have to work myself up to not be discouraged.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I enjoyed it. I think it's well done. I know it's good for those who see it. That one person maybe enjoyed it, and that has to be enough for me. And that's the fear. Like Chad, you've actually talked about this quite a bit. Even your own personal. I don't want to overstep my bounds, but even your own personal challenges with it, right, guys? I mean, and you got to be mindful. I think maybe is a good word.
Yeah, I mean, there's been tons of times where I'll put something on, I'll post something, I'll think, this is gonna be the one. I'm really proud of this drawing. I think people will really respond to it, and that you get like hardly anything. And then there'll be other times where you put something on there like, something I did in passing, and you get a bunch of people. It's like you can't predict it. And then what's even more frustrating is you'll see some artists on there that you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what you did? And it'll get like 100,000 views or likes, and you're just like, really? Like, I saw one the other day, and it's so hard because you don't want to be critical of other artists, but at the same time, there's sometimes you can't help yourself. But they had this big canvas, and they were just taking a squeegee and just kind of moving it around and doing these like designs. And like one or two of them, yeah, that's great. That it looked beautiful. It had a nice like whatever. But this artist like literally had like 100 posts, and it was basically the same painting, but it was different swirls, different colors, but it was basically the same thing. And she had like I want to say over 100,000 followers and like thousands of likes. And I'm like, what are you people like? Where are these people that are like fascinated by this? This is like nothing. Like, as I said before, you want to be careful being critical. And to her credit, there were a few that I liked. I was like, oh yeah, that looks really cool. But if that's the only thing you're doing over and over and over and over again, you're just like, but sometimes that's how social media works. Like you've got to like throw the same thing over and over and over again. Eventually gets traction. But that's where I don't think social media is as objective. It's not objective at all. So
I would agree. We've got a couple of really good comments. I want to go back to one of Janice's here. And Chad, this is a tough one, man. This is hence why I put the brushes down and grabbed the chair, because I think, Chad, you've probably been asked something similar to this, or have had this discussion quite a bit. And Janice, I don't think this is an easy answer, but the question is if putting in the time, will your style appear? Chad, this is a tough one for me. I mean, this is something that, I've experienced, even from college, you know what I mean? Like, I think first and foremost, you got to think about, what does your style mean? And what does that mean to you personally? Because there is in my opinion, an infinite level of style. You can replicate things. You can be inspired by things. And I go back to what I shared a story one time on here about something that was told to me by Thomas's dad, which was, if you're putting out your best quality work and you believe it to be your best and you're happy and satisfied with it, then to me, and he didn't say this part, but to me, Janice, that's your style appearing, right? And your style may change. It may modify and it may be different. But I think more importantly than your style, quote unquote, appearing is your satisfaction with self appearing, if that makes sense. And then whatever that is that you produced in that moment, that's your style. But I do think you can develop a technique, a skill set, a production level. All those things can be your style. But Chad, I know that was more of a metaphorical thing that I had stated there. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think yes and no. So I think on one side, yes, in the sense, like, for example, if you put up, something I drew next to something that Seth drew, hopefully you'd be able to walk in the room and be like, Seth drew that one, Chad drew that one. Like, you
Right.
know, and the more well known you get, the more people could say, oh, that's a Picasso, that's a Van Gogh, that's a whatever, because that is a particular style. And everyone has their own style. They're all like fingerprints. Like
Yeah.
you just drawing, no matter what level you're at, you're gonna have a particular style to what the way you draw. However, I also think there is a difference between style and voice.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
style would be your particular style. Like I just said, it's your hand. No matter how you practice, it's going to look your certain way. But voice is more intentional as an artist. It's something it's a message you're trying to communicate. It's a story you're trying to tell. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing comic books. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing film or writing novels. You're telling something through what you're writing, or I'm sorry, what you're drawing or what you're painting or etching
Oof.
or whatever it is you're doing. And everyone, it takes a long time to find your voice. So, and you can put in the time and you might not be able to find your voice until the end of your life, or you know, like it takes a long time to find your voice, and your voice may change. You may really like a certain style. You might like a certain, like for me, I really like charcoal. I've fallen in love in charcoal over the last year or two. And so, but
But
that's a
that wasn't always
style.
the case.
What's that?
But as you said, for the last year or two, that wasn't always the
Yeah,
case.
it wasn't always the case. And that's a style. But then the question is, what is a voice? And the voice would be going from, for example, kind of the example I used before. If I drew a portrait, a family portrait from the picture that someone gave me, that's a style. But as soon as I say, you know what, I'm going to draw a portrait of my wife crying in a corner with certain lighting. It's not dependent on this photograph. I'm trying to put in maybe some symbolic elements into it so that when someone sees it, they see that something's being conveyed about my wife or whoever it is, fill in the blank. Something's being said here, and that's voice. And that's very different. And that's very difficult to find. And that's one of those things where you could find your voice very quickly, or it could take forever to find your voice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's the best way I know how to describe it. To find a unique voice, that is very rare because
Yeah.
like if you
That's
sit
Van
there
Gogh
and you
level.
what's that? I'm sorry.
That's Van Gogh level.
Yes, if you think of the great masters, the reason why they were the great masters is because their voice was so unique that no one was replicating what they were doing, even if they were within a movement. Like
Yeah.
even within the Impressionists, there's certain artists that stand out because their voice was so unique, or the pop artists, or you know, pick whatever movement you want. The reason why those artists is because their voice was so unique. Typically, if you hear of an artist that you've never heard of before and you look at their stuff, the first thing that comes to mind, this just happened to me yesterday, actually. The first thing that comes to your mind, oh, that looks like this.
Right.
Someone shared with me the name of an artist, and I've already forgotten his name. He was like a French artist. I'd never heard of him before. In fact, I can look him up real quick, but I'd never heard of him before. And when I went back to look at his work, I responded to my friend and I said, "Oh, that looks a lot like Cy Twombly." And if you've ever heard of Cy Twombly, he does a lot of like the scribble stuff. He has a very unique kind of style. Not everyone likes him, but either way, the point was the reason why this artist that he had mentioned to me, oh, Decotex,
Mm.
Decotex, Degottex. Never heard of him. He's a French artist. I'm probably totally butchering his name. But anyways, he was
That's
very
usually
abstract.
my field, butchering names.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Thank you,
So
buddy. Thanks.
yeah. So anyways, I told my friend, I was like, "Oh, yeah, his stuff looks like this." And the reason why you've never heard of him is because yeah, his voice sounds like someone else's voice. So
I don't want to also be dismissive um of kind of the idea though that putting in time.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Hard work, Janice, always pays off. I believe that. In
100%.
one way or another, putting in the quote unquote time, it does help. It always helps. I don't I feel that way. You know, people who know me know that, you know, I love athletics as well. But I think that in anything, hard work always pays off. Maybe not when you think it should, maybe not how you think it should, but hard work always pays off. And so,
Hmm.
yes, putting in the time in the simplest form. I know Chad and I like to extrapolate and kind of go beyond, but yes, in the simplest form, yes, I think that putting in the time, you will continue to see your own artistic growth. You will see all these other things happen. I do. I really do believe that. Does, as Chad so eloquently and artistically put it, your voice and your style may or may not appear, but that putting into the time and that hard work will always pay off.
Yep. And, you know, it could be one of those things where at this point in your life, let's just say you like to draw sunflowers, okay? So you're drawing sunflowers, they look like your style. You know, someone looks at your sunflowers, they know you painted those, but they could walk in a room and they'd say, Van Gogh painted those sunflowers, you painted those sunflowers, right? So that's the difference in style. But then maybe down the road, let's say, you know, in 10 years, you know, you had some tragedy happen to you, which, you know, we hope that doesn't happen, but let's say that happens, and it causes something in your soul to start questioning, asking the big questions of life, and you're really wrestling and everything, and that starts showing up in your art. Now your voice is yelling through that artwork, because now it's more than just sunflowers. Now it's like, no, this is, I'm wrestling with this meaning, and what is this? Now, a voice doesn't have to be this like deeply philosophical thing. That's not what I'm saying.
Or
All I'm
pain,
saying,
or pain or sadness.
yeah, it doesn't have to be all that. I'm just saying that your experience of life over time and over practice starts to emerge because of your life experiences. And as your style refines and your skill refines, then your voice has a medium to express itself. And yeah, that does take time for sure, 100%. And we see it in students, you know, like, you know, students will come in, especially when they're first starting. You can tell a student that's just first started drawing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just some key, you know, marks of someone that's just, you know, getting used to drawing or painting. And over time, you start to see their style develop. And then when they truly are starting to get it, you start to see their voice. You start to see, oh, this is, they're saying something with this. They're expressing something. It's moving me as a person. It's making me think about stuff. And that's really hard to do. That is really, really hard to do. Really hard to find. So, but you can't find it without time. So maybe that's where I'll end. You can't find the voice without putting in the time.
Ooh, love it. Amazing. So good that Matt's given some props to Janice for that great question. What an amazing evening. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you guys joining on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram. We are so thankful that all of you guys have jumped on. These are the kind of conversations that Chad and I will connect next week and be like, man, that was awesome. This is so
Yep.
great. We love it. That's the hope of what VAAS Live is these kind of conversations, these kind of techniques and skills to communicate and develop and to have. And we're so grateful for all of you that jump on, whatever platform you're on, whatever country you're in, whatever time of day that you're watching. We're so grateful that you're joining and creating with us. It's an amazing experience. Matt, Janice, all of you guys, Pia, BJ, Tom, Mrs. Fashions. Oh, and I butcher names. This is where I butcher names when I start to try to give shout outs early. But all of you guys, all of you, thank you guys so much for jumping in and joining us. It's such an amazing experience to get to create, and we've still got some time. So ask away, ask those questions. But do make sure that you give us a like, follow, and a share so that you can join us next time and that we can continue to create these things for you guys. It allows us to push some comment. Looks like I might have been frozen on camera. It'll catch back up in a second. But you guys are absolutely amazing. We thank you guys so much. Such a wonderful way to end a Saturday evening. But we've got about 30 minutes left, so we're going to keep creating. Ask those questions away. We love it. We're so grateful for it.
Still frozen. I can hear you, but you're still frozen.
I apologize, everybody. I don't know why.
There you
go.
are.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm back. Boop, 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 boop. Mm-hmm. I feel kind of stuck because I did not expect to work as quickly as I have, and I did not pre-mix all my values enough. And I really don't want to have to remix some of these pigments today. I'm sitting there going, well, now what do I do? And so part of what I'm doing is I'm kind of trying to evaluate where I'm at and what I was able to get. Because I actually, Chad, I've gotten a lot more put on canvas than I kind of expected to. And so I'm just kind of making sure I'm going in the right direction, ladies and gentlemen. Was that AI? Yeah, yes, it was AI, Seth. Beep, 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 beep. That's funny, Matt. That's really funny. And Janice actually makes a comment. She goes, "Thanks, guys. I'm going to put in the time to find my voice." Janice, I have seen some of your work, and I have seen your voice speak. So don't think it's some of it's just consistency, right? But you have done some work that is beautiful and very expressive and stylistically fantastic. So don't take what Chad and I were saying as like you have to put time in before you can get these things. I don't want to mislead and say, well, good work doesn't happen. That's not what we're saying. You produce good work in all these things. And I have seen there's a couple, and man, if I could think of them, I would throw them out there for you. But I think that your voice should be a continuous development, right? And because who Seth is 10 years ago is not the same Seth now. Who Seth was earlier today is not the same Seth. And you know, you're constantly growing. You know, again, I go back to the statement that I love, ancora imparo, right? Still we are learning. You know, we're still growing. And so I don't want you to think that you don't have a voice. You do have a voice, and it's a lovely voice. But to Chad's point, that voice will become more articulated and better demonstrated and better expressed as you put that time in. So don't think that you don't have a voice yet. You already do. It's just one that continues to develop. And then, of course, there's different levels of voice, right? Mm-hmm. You have those extreme individuals, Monet, Van Gogh, you know, the masters that, you know, Chad and I reference all the time, where their voice just is a little bit more unique. Well, I should say a little bit significantly more unique. I don't know. Would you agree with that, Chad?
I mean, it's hard to agree with you all the time, but I will agree with you this time.
Well, because I think it can be discouraging sometimes when you start having some of these. And by the way, guys, this is really wonderful artistic conversation. I mean, really, this is brilliant. It's almost like we're at a cafe, you know, and discussing artistic movements and philosophy. And I think it's absolutely amazing. This is high level, in my opinion, just mine, high level artistic thinking and conversation. I think it's brilliant. But I think it can be discouraging sometimes when you have these conversations of, well, I don't have a voice then. Well, then, you know, I'm not there. Well, it's okay to not be there, but also don't think that you're not able to produce work that's meaningful or relatable or, you know, anything. You can, and you are, you know what I mean? I don't think it should be one of those things that is in any form or fashion discouraging.
Yes, I feel like I need a cigarette and a beret.
Yes,
we're in the cafe. Yes, I think this is my voice, you know. But yeah, no, I just being silly aside, I agree. I mean, I think you can overanalyze yourself out of a voice and discourage yourself so much that you think, well, I don't have a voice. I don't think I could ever find a voice. And it's not like that, you know. It's meant more to just challenge each of us to think, you know, and I don't want to say think harder, but just like challenge ourselves to think more creatively, because it's easy to become very apathetic or just satisfied with what we're doing. And I think complacent, that's the word I was thinking of. Yeah, it's so easy to become complacent as an artist, to think, especially if you reach a goal, you know, like if you're like, I just want to learn how to paint apples, for example, just off the top of my head. I want to learn how to paint apples really well. And let's say you take a couple months and you really learn how to paint an apple. Well, you can just sit back and be like, well, I did that. Yeah, but what are you saying about that apple? What does that mean? What can you do with that now? Can, you know, let's get to the next level. And it's in those moments that you start to find your voice. And yeah, so Janice kind of makes, yeah. I don't know that we can post that one for kids present, but either way, She was just saying about just being old, and I'm not going to make any comments about age except for with Patricia if she were on here. But no, I think, and that's the other thing. You don't want to feel this burden or this urgency that, oh, it's too late for me. I can't find my voice.
Yep.
That's not true either. So like, it's talking about voice and style is kind of abstract because it's hard to like pin down, but when you see it and oh, that's voice. That someone's really saying that. But that's really hard there's not like a checklist. If I do this, this, and this, then I have voice. It's just one of those things that just happens, and
Yep.
you know, but you're never too old to find it. Like, yeah, don't ever think that. So
I agree. I think there is this, I don't know. I think there's this oftentimes stigmatized idea that, age is reflective of that, right? Either
yeah,
you're young and avant-garde or you're old and wise, or something like those extremes, like, I don't know. I think there's this idea of that. And I think it's romantic. And I think sometimes that is the case, right? Sometimes it is, but I think it's uniquely different for everyone.
yep.
And
That's
and I
right.
think sometimes it comes and goes for people at different stages.
Yep.
I mean, Chad, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but Chad talks a lot about how he went through a time period where he didn't create a lot of art.
Yep.
And it was absent from his life. And I would be pained to imagine Chad didn't find his way back. We wouldn't have the beautiful works that he's created. He wouldn't be teaching and instructing the students the way that he does. And but you never know. There could have been a version where Chad didn't find his way back to it, and
Yeah.
and I think that everybody's journey is unique and beautiful and wonderful or sad or whatever it is. Everybody's journey is different, and I think we forget that often. I think that we have these romanticized ideas of things, and sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. That's a very poignant observation, my friend.
Oh, you are so kind tonight, man.
Well, just every once in a while, I'll be kind, but
Well, you're not called the kind wizard.
That's right. I'm the humble one, but I am the most humble person you've ever met. So, oh, just kidding. Just kidding.
How do people not watch us and just have a blast? I don't know. I mean, I'm kidding. See, I'm not humble. Love us. Everyone love us. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to step away from it. I got to look at it a little bit. I'm seeing now that my values on my figures are really pretty strong. Dropping in, if you guys want, I'm gonna see if I can do this for you guys. Dropping in that top side of the, let's see, can you guys see that there? I've got a lot of sheen on it because I had to add some linseed oil to help make my raw umber move. My raw umber is pretty thick and I had to get it movable. But I can see that I've got a pretty good level of contrast here, right? Let me see if I can tilt that down a little bit. So putting in that background, really, I do have good separation of background, midground, foreground, right? Background, midground, foreground, and I'm getting good value separation. But what I'm realizing is their hair is going to make a big difference.
Yep.
When I put the texture of the hair, the value of the hair, the form of the hair, it's really either going to flatten out or really continue to create that depth.
Yeah.
And the challenge with that is, for me, hair is really tough. Hair can be really hard. It can become very strandy. It can be very volumetric. It can be very flat. And so I really want to be conscious because I'm realizing right now that that's going to change a lot of this piece. And I'll go back even a little bit further so you guys can see it almost in its entirety. Because if you see the texture of that blanket and the folds for a shirt, the hair is going to have a similar flow to it. Does that make sense, guys? Like, it's going to have similar brush movement. It's long, strenuous. And if I don't get that right, this whole piece will flatten out. I mean, really flatten out. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to rely on color to not make it flat.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that my values are strong so that when I put color in, when I glaze color on top, the chroma makes it even stronger. I don't want to rely on the chroma to create separation. So I'm really going to have to hone in and make sure I execute this hair effectively, not correctly. There's a difference. That's kind of what we were talking about with photorealistic. I can paint this 100% accurately, but that may not be effective for my piece. So I need to execute this very effectively so that it doesn't flatten out.
Yeah, you've got a lot of beautiful things going on in that painting. I mean, especially with the clothing, the hands, and the clothing folds, and the what is it, the controller she's holding in her hand. I look forward to seeing how you do the computer there, but also the composition. I don't know if you're going to do anything with that black area down at the bottom or the dark background, but I kind of like the flatness of it because it's creating this like nice like third right down the middle, that third in the middle, and then in the corners. Really, really nice. Yeah, I like that.
And so I literally actually I utilized this in one of my, believe it or not, my young artist class today, my young artist drawing class. And we were talking about the rule of thirds and balancing composition, layout and composition. How are they connected and how are they separate? And one of the things that I agree with you, Chad, I feel very confident. Now this is Matt, if you're still on, I took this photo of them but I am probably only relying on about 70 or 80% of the photo. I have made conscious changes to this layout and composition to be more effective in my eyes. And as Chad's pointing out, I still have a nice dark negative section here, right? And so I'm trying to balance all of the folds with these big, dark, flat masses. I don't want them to be perfectly flat, but it's got to be enough that it's not just all texture, because then you're not going to look anywhere. Yeah. And so between the framing of all this texture through here, then you have the softer faces and the flesh tones, right? And the faces are almost directly on the vertical rule of thirds on the left-hand side. Yeah. And to Chad's point, I have this nice horizontal even balance right across the middle, but then they're strongly on the rule of thirds right here. And so, obviously the focal point is here, but the secondary elements to bounce around are the switch and the computer. Because if you haven't heard the story on this, this is kind of my contemporary take on a 1989 photograph of a mother playing the Nintendo Game Boy surrounded by kids. To me, it's the epitome of like the late 80s, early 90s when gaming came into the household. And the kids' hair and the clothing, the mom looks like straight out of the early 90s, like 1990, right? And that reminds me so much of, my early childhood. This is that contemporary take, which is she's a home mom, but she's working from home with her laptop, playing the newest version of the Nintendo console instead of the kid playing and the kids watching. And so for me, the focal point are the people, but the secondary elements are the work from home laptop, because in the 1989 photograph, the mom, theoretically was a homemaker. And so, now this is the modern version of the homemaker who's still working from home, right? And so I wanted those secondary elements to still stand out. Well, that only works if you don't get lost in everything else. So you have to find a balance. And to Chad's point, which I'm so grateful you said that, sir, is those darker values allow you to look elsewhere, I think. Yeah. I think it's a calming moment in the painting. It's a rest, a visual rest. And you don't just bounce all over the place, because if you don't look where I want you to look, right, then I didn't execute the painting well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Boy, man, today, I'm not going to lie, ladies and gents, I was pretty tired. I was pretty tired today. It's been a long week. It's been an amazing week. But boy, if you guys can't tell, this is just exhilarating. It's so wonderful to be on here with you guys and to talk through these things. And, as Chad, we talk about voice, we talk about style. Something I was going to kind of chime in on is I love, Chad, I love a brilliant and a well-executed artist statement. Like for a show or an exhibition. Yeah. I absolutely love a brilliant artist statement. And you guys basically kind of heard my artist statement for this piece just now. And that means I get to rehearse it and practice it and refine it. And that to me is just exhilarating. It's so much fun.
Well, you're welcome that we could contribute to your artistic development.
Yeah, that's the whole point of VAAS Live. That's why we do this. We're on episode 38. 38 episodes. It's amazing. And it's brought to you by Alani Nu. It's really not. It's not. I'm teasing. We're in no way affiliated with the drink or anything. I'm kidding.
This will be our last episode because we just got sued by Lonnie, and
that's right. Nice knowing you guys.
Nice hanging out with you all. Yeah.
Chad will be back with Chad Live. No, we got a great question here from Janice. She goes, "What is an artist statement?" Chad, do you want to take that one, or you want me to take it, or both?
We can both. You go first. I've not written a lot of artist statements, so you probably have more experience than I do on that. So go for it.
Well, I have been fortunate enough because I think a lot of artist statement are open to the artist presenting the work. So usually an artist statement is usually accompanied with an exhibition or a show, Janice. It's typically not something that you just kind of carry in your back pocket, right? It's typically a more formal notice or letter or statement or writing. It's usually accompanied with an exhibition or part of an exhibition or a show. And essentially it's an artist articulating a variety or components of why they're doing the show or the artwork. So it can include things such as motivation and inspiration. It can include things such as specific techniques or skills that are involved. Like if an artist were doing a series of works where they completely handmade their paints or, did all these other, elegant elements, they may include some of that in the artist statement. That part of my philosophy and process is hand making my own pigments from the earth materials of my backyard. And it's a process of developing and creating from beginning to end in its entirety. It can be, sometimes metaphorical. Well, this is a representation of my inner soul and all that kind of stuff. But it is typically a formal writing that is accompanied either a work of art or a series of works of art. And it articulates the methodology, the influence, the reasoning. It can go on all that stuff. And it just helps the viewer understand what the artist is doing and why they're doing it. You don't have to have an artist statement, right? Sometimes, Chad, you can go to exhibitions and shows and they don't want to give you any of that. The goal is to not give it away or to give it to you. They just want you to experience the work. In my case, most of my work is very narrative driven. And I like to give background on where the narrative was founded or where it's coming from, because I think it adds context, it adds emotion and connection to the overall works of art. And I think a very well-written artist statement can change the experience of the work, in my opinion. And so when you have a really well-executed one, I enjoy that. But I also like writing and I love reading, and I like seeing the insight into the artist creation, if you will.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. That was really good. I mean, that's exactly what artist statement is. I always laugh at the ones where it's like, the person's done all this abstract work, and I see this all the time.
Yes.
They do all this abstract work, and then they come up with the most pretentious, hard to understand, abstract cookie cutter, like I can't even think off the top of my head, but it's always like, yeah, I'm exploring the visual response of space and the personality that's exhibited in the person's experience of the environment as they stand and stare into this abyss of meaning. And they just use all this, like, and you're just like, what are you saying? Like, that makes no sense. Like, what is this? And a lot of times it gets passed off because it's so esoteric and no one understands it. It comes off as something so like profound, and it's like, it's not profound. The person just didn't know what they were saying. They're trying to impress you with all this crazy language.
And unfortunately, I feel like that's 9 out of 10 times, with this. But in truth be told, though, sometimes, Janice, what Chad just said, you can sense it. Now, there are some cases where you'll go into some unique works and they write something like that, and you sit there and you go, "Holy crap, that's it."
Yeah,
like
sure.
They are there. They nailed it. Unfortunately, to Chad's point, I feel like a lot of artists use that as a justification for their lack of excellence. They try to use an artist statement to articulate it. For instance, and I don't want to I don't want to overstep my bounds. Actually, I think Thomas talked about this when he was on here, that he went to a sculptor and they had a crazy artist statement that was just, out there, kind of like what Chad said. But yet, when he saw the work and he was able to be there, he goes, "Oh no, it's legit." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for
it's
sure.
good. It's really good. It's just unfortunate that a lot of times in the contemporary art world, people put out these massive pontifications of BS and want that to justify the crappy work. And that's that's not a good execution.
For sure. Yeah.
I think to Chad's point, it's more rare than people realize. Like when you're writing something that is esoteric the right word? Is that what you had used?
Yeah.
Or like, whatever it is, it's rare to have artwork match something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that it's not possible. It's just rare. And I think a lot of people are very self-righteous, honestly.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just nasty human beings.
Yeah. Maybe we're the ones that are self-righteous, judging all these people. But
right. Who knows? Man, what a wonderful evening. What a way to spend a Saturday night. Absolutely brilliant. Chad, we typically kind of talk about, were we able to achieve what we wanted to achieve? Look at that background, brother. I mean, if you aren't creating contrast from your foreground and background, I don't know what is. That is beautiful mark making. I'm going to take that full screen so everybody can kind of take a look at it. Take a look at that. That's absolutely fantastic. Wow.
So yeah, I went back in there and just did a lot of little texture, and those are, like trees and shading and all that. And I think that was really helpful to do, because it really does help create that contrast between the background and the spaceship, and really makes the spaceship stand out. So I feel like that's successful. I'm happy with that. I think that's the direction I'm going to go. Down here in this corner, or this lower third, it's going to be quite difficult. I am going to have to use a reference for that, but I'm going to do the trees like a little bit larger, and they're like pointing up at you and then bending out, so it shows that kind of curvature. Because here's the launch pad, where that tunnel that you see in this one, that's the tunnel that's going up. The tunnel entrance is right here, and the spaceship has now come out of there and is heading right at you. So these trees right here are actually going to be pointing straight up at you.
Ooh, that's gonna be tough.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. So I will need a reference for that. And then there'll be a transition from trees doing that, and then they'll slowly kind of recede back into this more kind of abstracted texture in the background. But I think I have plenty of detail in the background, so I need to be a little bit more simplistic with the spaceship. So I think it'll be a good balance. And then this kind of chemtrail, or whatever you call that, I'm gonna put in a little more shading, a little more. Isn't that what they're called? I don't know.
I don't know.
I thought that's what they're called when it comes out of the back of an airplane. But either way,
I thought chemtrails were a conspiracy theory.
Oh, really? Oh, maybe it is. I don't know. But either way, yeah. So I'm gonna go back into all that and tighten all that up probably next week. So yeah, I'm happy with what I got done today for sure. So
that is phenomenal and fantastic. Quick last couple of shout outs, Matt. We're so grateful for you as well. It's a wonderful experience for you guys to, for us to have you guys on here and to talk. Janice, thank you. I'm hope it makes you feel better. And we're so grateful for you guys every evening. Again, I'm Seth Jones, one of the co-founders and lead instructor here at VAAS. And this is our most wonderfully humble wizard, Chad Nuss, our master draftsman. But we are grateful for each and every single one of you guys. We do this every Saturday evening, typically every Saturday evening, 6 to 8. Now, next week, Chad, I may not be able to be here. So we'll see if we can get you a guest artist on here, or get Thomas on or something, or just maybe our own humble solo wizard. But we are grateful every single weekend. You guys are absolutely amazing. Chad, anything you want to take us away with?
No, I always enjoy this time. It was a great talking with you, great talking with everyone else. Good conversation, good time to make some drawings. So it was awesome.
Absolutely. So from us here at VAAS Live, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
See y'all.